On Agenda Kenya tonight, Abraham Korir Sing'oei, international human rights lawyer, Dr. Charles Otieno, head of governance, polity and policy, David Osiani from Raila Odinga Presidential Campaign Secretariat, and Peter Simani, chairman, Political Parties Disputes Tribunal. A warm welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us. This is Agenda Kenya, your award-winning talk show. Tonight we focus on the just concluded pre-election coalition arrangements which have just been formed by our political parties in readiness for elections 2013. What is in there for the common mwananchi? That's you and me. Do they have what it takes to take this country forward? We find out tonight. I've got fantastic audience members coming in from different counties from across the country. Welcome aboard. Our first question is from Kioko Shadrach Moki, who is a student.
I ever feel that the coalitions were formed under a pressure to beat the December 4th deadline, and I feel the Kenyans were not considered in the formation of their coalitions.
Okay. Thank you, Shadrach. Korir, give it a go.
Yeah, it's a very important question. I think it's important to say that the law itself sets a timeline for the filing of coalition agreements, and that is 3 months before the elections. Hence, the December 4th deadline for the submission of coalition agreements. The process for of negotiating these coalition agreements, clearly had to be between political party leaders. It is understandable that there could have been little participation on the part of the public, but I think the rationale is very clear. It is intended that that these agreements, that these individuals coming together will secure the constitutional requirements of acquiring the presidency, which is 50% plus one, as well as 25% of the votes in at least 24 counties. So in pursuit of political power, you can understand, why these individuals, came together. But secondly, if you begin to look at each of these coalitions, you can see benefits for Wananchi. You can see, for example, a ticket that talks heavily about stability, and non-violence. You can see the tickets that talk about reform focus, et cetera, et cetera. So implicit, even in the pursuit of this political power, is the intention of driving, certain policy imperatives forward. Okay. And so I would say that, there is something in it for the citizens of this country.
Thank you. David, in your view, what do you think is the real motivation behind these political formations? Because I remember sometime last week when Honorable William Ruto was hosting Kalenjin elders in Eldoret, he was quoted, allegedly said that the reason why he signed up with TNA is because Kikuyus have got the numbers.
Well, foremost, coalitions are not new to this country. This country is replete with history of coalitions, dating back to 1968, in the 60s, just pre-independence, where progressives came together to form a coalition, and they formed KANU, which was originally a very progressive party. And then those who were against this whole process, the retrogressives, the Cavendish, the Lord Egerton, then engineered the making of KADU. And then after that, when KANU had won the election, they were collapsed into one. And coalitions are formed on different bases, but most of them are ideological. Today, we are in coalitions where one ticket has an ideology, in my opinion, a very serious and sincere ideology that is against the ICC system of justice. That's an ideology. Sadly, it has taken an ethnic path, because there are times when you cannot differentiate the ethnic and the ideological. Sometimes the ethnic just naturally interweaves into the ideological. Then there is another ticket that is formed on the basis, as I say, of reforms and democracy. That's another ideology.
So in your view, you belong to ODM, don't you?
Yes, I do.
In your view, now tell us about the ideology of the is it CORD? The coalition that ODM has signed into. What is the ideology?
The name speaks of it. It's a coalition for reforms and democracy.
So that is the ideology.
That's the ideology.
That's
what they're pursuing. You know, the clock takes us back to 2002. These people belonged together. Kalonzo Raila belonged to a similar party. They might not be of the same values, but they belonged to a similar party.
Okay.
And so it's just a reunion of similar thinking. Just the same way, the same class that belonged to KANU has gone back to a different setting, but together.
Okay, thank you, David. Dr. Otieno, these formations, are you happy with the motivations behind them? Or we saw a lot of cat and mouse on 4th of December.
I think let's come back to the world. Watching this coalition agreement is like watching a Nigerian movie, a wedding in a Nigerian movie, where you know, and everybody in the church knows that there's a problem with those two people on the altar, except the priest. And the priest goes ahead and conducts the marriage and issues a certificate, whatever. This is what we have in this country. These people have been brought together because they have to be together. None of them trust each other. We don't trust them any more than they trust each other. But we have to put up with these people. So the problem is that we don't know what's there for us. The process of negotiating this coalition also was wrong, because in my view, I believe that every political party in this country needed to consult with the party members. Party members needed to vote whether they'll go into a coalition with this party and for what reasons. So we need to learn to do the right things the right way. So I still feel that even though they've rushed, they've agreed on a few things, it will not hold. Okay. It will not hold because they do not represent our values.
Yeah, thank you. Let's respond to this. Why do you think this law was put there in the first place, according to Simani? And on top of that, where are the issues? I mean, you saw what happened in Nairobi on 4th of December. Was anyone talking about unemployment or you know, poverty or food security? These guys were just looking for one another in town. I'm told there were traffic jams in some routes where it was suspected that a certain coalition member is hiding, you know, Simani. Where are we headed?
Well, I think you've answered the question yourself, because the provisions in the Political Parties Act for coalitions were put there specifically to enable like-minded political parties to get together, fuse their policies together and their ideas together as you go into the election, and together to sell those ideas and issues to the public. That was the intention. And if you look at the third schedule of the Political Parties Act, and you see the mandatory requirements of coalition agreements, which include policies and so forth, and the structures, dispute resolution mechanisms and so forth, then you will realize that what we saw on the 4th was really an abuse of what the law provides. And it is a very unfortunate situation, but that's a situation that we have now, yes.
All right. Let's get to hear from the audience. What do you think about these coalitions? Are you guys happy? Are you mourning? Let's get to hear. Start with the gentleman in front here.
Looking at the formation of these coalitions, as you had already put it up, the coalitions have not been issue-based.
Okay.
They have just been vested on selfish interests, because nobody's coming out to really tell us what is their agenda to the common mwananchi. Or they are saying that we want to distribute these positions either in a formula of 50 to 50, 33 to 33 to 33. Nobody's talking about unemployment.
Okay, thank you. There's a lady in yellow. Okay. Your name, please?
My name is Florence Mukadi. I was born in Busia and I reside in Kibera. Mine is to say that actually between these two coalitions that were formed on 4th, actually one was a bit fair.
There were actually more than two.
Despite there were actually more than two, but I'm talking about the two major ones which actually were aired on the TV. I remember watching the ODM coalition, which was actually a bit fair because the common mwananchi was involved. Then this other one of TNA actually, I think it was
How do you know that the common Mwananchi was involved?
Because I was watching on the TV and actually the common Mwananchi was there.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the truth, and actually the common Mwananchi has actually made the decision. Despite the Kenyan leaders have tried to circumlocute Kenyans, I think we Kenyans ambao ni Mwananchi wa kawaida, we've already come up with the decision that we shall not only follow the tribal differences.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Florence. We come to this side now. The gentleman in a tie, your name, please.
My name is Kevin Ucheng from Kenyatta University. From the experience that we have had before, the coalitions that have been signed before, have realized that those parties, immediately after they have formed the coalition, they will normally have blame games. Like recently, you had ODM blaming PNU over government failing. They were blaming that ODM's policies were not included when the government was being structured. So with me, I am not after coalitions. Let every man stand alone, like Yapi and Matakaro and the rest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I can take one more. The gentleman on the second row, your name, please.
My name is Raphael Okoth. There's the issue of pre-election pacts. Are they going to be cohesive, or are they going to polarize the country further?
Thanks for those comments. We take a break now, but we'll come back and address all of them. Don't go away. Welcome back to Agenda Kenya with me, Jason Nyantino. Tonight we are focusing on the just concluded pre-election coalition formed by our political parties in readiness for elections 2013. Do they have what it takes to take this country forward, or is it just business as usual? Korir, there was a couple of questions from the audience. We can just give it a go.
Yeah, no, I think very interesting questions. But for me, suffice it to say that these coalitions are designed to address a fundamental problem within our politics, which is the problem that Kenya has grappled with for a long time, the problem of inclusion. If you look at the past, all sorts of communities keep crying about marginalization and exclusion and discrimination, et cetera, et cetera. These coalitions, by bringing together previously warring communities, I think it will contribute a lot to the stabilization of our political process. The social cost, the socio-economic cost of the conflict in the Rift Valley in 2007, 2008 is something that we are still paying for as a country. And we cannot ignore that. So to have two communities that have previously never seen eye to eye coming together and saying, look, let's work together for the common good of this country, that's not something to be taken for granted. Secondly,
so Korir, you're saying the coalitions are actually issue-based.
Absolutely,
so,
absolutely.
So which issue are you talking about?
The issue of ethnicity, for example. Yeah. It was a huge issue on Agenda 4. That we needed to fix negative ethnicity, for example. And part of the way of fixing that is accommodation, ensuring an accommodative framework,
Can you say that when you haven't read these agreements, or have you?
Maybe as read.
But the whole point is, at least for me, okay, and I was going to come to that point. The point is that these agreements are public agreements that we can access as citizens, pursuant to Article 35 on the right to information, and actually scrutinize them on whether, in fact, they are, for example, they're national in character, that they are inclusive of all communities, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, to the extent that they at least begin to deal with ethnicity, which has balkanized and polarized this country for a long time, I would say, hey, go for it.
Okay, let's hear Simani. I think you wanted to speak a little more.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I wanted to. You see, the first question we have to ask ourselves is whether these are coalitions as envisaged under the Political Parties Act, or they're just quasi-tribal pacts that these politicians are entering into.
What do you feel?
I feel they're tribal pacts, because if it is true that they are coalitions, then I think the public is entitled and must demand that they read the policies, they read the objectives, they see why these pacts have been entered into. You saw last minute, people, as you correctly say, people moving all over the place. Why would, for instance, one politician on a Monday be with so-and-so, on a Tuesday go to so-and-so? Where did that policy change? Where did that issue change? Where did the consultation take place? And I think that the public has to ask themselves, are they relevant in this process? Are you relevant in this process? Were you consulted in this process? Do you know what it is that they are agreeing among themselves? When somebody says, I'm going to take 30% of the cake, what cake are you talking about? If you look at the Constitution, the appointment of public officers in the new Constitution is not going to be a question of sharing it out. You'll have to go to Parliament, you'll have to debate, you'll have to vet. The public who is going to be involved to decide integrity and so on and so forth. So you cannot promise and say, I'm going to take 30% here and 30%.
Okay.
So the public, I think, must really question and demand.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Tino, do you think these coalitions are tribal? Are they just coalitions, or are they just tribal coalitions?
I think they're like, trying to move frogs across the river in a wheelbarrow. By the time you cross, many of them will jump out.
Yes,
so
that brings us to the question from our brother from KU, the blame game. Talking about coalitions that have just been formed anyway. What are we expecting? Then there was also a question from Raphael about cohesiveness. What are we expecting?
I think one of the problems, the reason why we have these coalitions is because the people that were negotiating them wants to win power. And to win, you need to have the numbers. So it's all about number crunching, who you bring on board to make sure that you have the number that will get you to win the next elections. And that number comes down to the tribal groupings that you can put together. The only problem is how they were negotiated. I think I agree that every political party, and this is where the law is also weak, every political party needed to convene their delegates, put this motion to their delegates, the delegates to agree whether they want to enter into a coalition with the party or another group on what issues and to what extent that will be respected by the party. I think what we saw was a group of people coming together, agreeing on how they are going to divide power, and it's us that will suffer, the Kenyans, the Mwananchi. It's not about the jobs that they need to create. It's not about the opportunity they need to create for the youth. It's about them, and they want it, and they don't care about anything.
Let's hear from David. David, you from ODM, or is it COD? So which one do I use, man?
Both.
Both. So let me use COD for purposes of this discussion.
All right.
Did your party put the cart before the horse? Because like Dr. Otieno is saying, did you consult the party rank and file? Or you first of all divide power in Nairobi, then call those guys from the village, they rubber stamp, then you're happy?
I think the Constitution is very clear that the Governing Council ought to ratify it, and which ODM's Governing Council did. The other thing is, when Korir speaks about a coalition, what he's saying, that when he's saying he's bridging the negatively ethnic bridge that has been between the Kalenjin and the Kikuyu, what Korir is not saying is that might not necessarily translate to what happens in the ground, and that Kenyans are aware that this is a coalition formed on the basis of a shared tribulation, all right? Not on the basis of issues.
You guys
when someone says...
You sound like you guys are on different political pedestals? Or?
Well, and as I said, that in itself also is just an ideology, that we are against the ICC system of justice, not the ICC entirely. This system of justice doesn't work for Kenya. We want another one. And as I said also, my brother has commented and said he'd like Kiapi, the Kiapi kind of thing where they go alone. That's to blind yourself from the fact in the 21st century. Coalitions are all over the world. If you go to Israel, the Likud party had to merge, form a coalition together with the Labour Party. If you go to the UK, the Conservatives and the Labour Party and the Liberal Party are together. If you go to the US, be it as it may, somewhat in its complex nature, it's a coalition. Because the Congress is controlled by the Republicans and the White House by the Democrats.
I got a question
so
for
coalitions
you, David.
are just... they are the thing of the 21st century.
This issue of tribalism.
Yes.
Because I got a feeling that it is the big tribes which are coming together. You're just hearing Luos, Kambas, Kalenjins, Kikuyus. Where are the other Kenyans?
Apparently, that's why, for example, for CORD, there is no distribution of seats on percentage basis. Because when you say TNA and URP are taking 50-50, you're in effect saying that Kalenjin and Kikuyu, understanding the basis on which, and their formations, because TNA emanates from Limuru, and the Limuru meeting, and URP emanates from the Kamatusa meeting. And you know, for let's say ODM and Wiper, their support bases have ensured they merge because they are in dire need of devolution.
Can they exchange the ties? That's a good one. I'm not quite sure if Korir wants to do that, but let me take my next question from Gilbert Madenge. Gilbert is a political consultant.
Now my question is, us as the Kenyans who are the lead voters, when we didn't know the details of the coalition pacts being signed by the different political parties?
Details of these pacts. I think, Korir, you have touched on that. I think from a lawyer's perspective, could we just educate the people? How do we access that document? Do you write a letter to the register of political parties? How do you go about it?
You know, this is really the ideal situation. In the past, you know, we've had memorandums of understanding, for example, that have been abused, and there's been all the blame game that you've heard about. The new law therefore says, look, you will have a legally binding agreement between different political parties that will be deposited with the registrar of political parties. So to the extent, for me at least, that it's a public document, it becomes a subject matter of Article 35 of the Constitution, so that a citizen can write, in my view, you know, to the registrar of political parties to say, look, make this public, or can I have the document so that I can do whatever I want to do with it? You know, but the challenge here is that Kenya has yet to adopt a freedom of information law. So it is still possible that, you know, and Simani should educate us on this, it should still be possible for the registrar to say, look, you know, I may not do it. And yet, for me at least, these documents should become public. The citizens should scrutinize these documents. They should educate themselves on the contents thereof. And then based on those contents, you know, they can then exercise their preference at elections and decide that this coalition serves my interest better than the other.
I think let's leave the registrar. The registrar is merely a depository for these agreements. The original agreements that they enter into are given to her as the original agreement so that people don't change them. But I agree with you, and this is my proposal. My proposal is that if these political parties are genuine, then what they must do from tomorrow is buy space, these advertisements, the way they're saying, I want to be governor, I want to be senator, take that money and print out, publish all these agreements in the daily newspapers. Let the public read, let the public know what they have been doing in their back rooms, and let the public say, okay, this is what I am going to vote for, if they're honest. Okay. But you see, the public has to note, for instance, that there is, what we have seen is an agreement of individuals, not an agreement of political parties and philosophies and issues. Why do I say that? Because, for instance, and I say this purely in my personal capacity as an individual, you'll find that as of today, William Ruto is an ODM member. Uhuru Kenyatta is a KANU member. Musalia Mudavadi is an OD member. They cannot make promises on behalf of the surrogate parties. Legally, they cannot. Perhaps after Parliament is dissolved, they will conveniently resign from their current parties and scramble into the nests that they have been building thereafter. But as of now, So that is why it is important for the public, and I cannot overemphasize this point, to demand whenever you go to these public meetings, to listen to them talking, tell them to publish these coalition agreements so that you can read them.
Thank you. Let's get to hear from the public, because it is here, especially in terms of making public these coalition arrangements or agreements which have already been signed by the political parties. At the back.
My name is Patrice Lumumba Muinti, analyst, consultant, and a strategist. Actually, the government of Kenya and the political parties, they are making a mistake. Because this should have been done before. A civic education conducted countrywide. People should understand what are these coalitions for. And they should put their manifestos, ideology, visions, and policies so that people can understand. Because we have got around 8 to 10 million people are in ignorance. They don't know anything. And they want to vote for these political parties. How are they going to vote? And they don't know the party stands for what.
Thank you, Lumumba.
Yeah.
One more. I'll get it back to you, Dr. I need to take one more. The gentleman on my extreme right. Your name, please?
Okay, thank you. I am Odawa Gordon. I want to believe that what is going on needs to be exposed to the public, because I just believe that there is something fishy. That is a exemplary shown by the Honorable Ruto when he went and tabled something before the parliament concerning the defection from parties. So if the coalitions are to help us, why then should there be a room for defection? So it means that they rushed in making this opinion or the ideas. They are not uniting. They cannot marry. They cannot live.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one more. No, I'll go to my extreme left now. In a cape, yellow cape. Your name, please?
My name is Maina from Bunge la Mwananchi. The coalition that is made, the time is not on their side. So my point is this. It is the civil society and the registrar of the political party to give the people the message, because parties have a lot of work to cover the country.
Thank you very much. Time for our second break now, and if you're watching us from home, you need to respond to this question. Do you think the pre-election coalitions will serve the interest of the ordinary Kenyans? Do you think the pre-election coalitions will serve the interests of the ordinary Kenyans? That's you and me. Text your answer to the number on your screen and give us your name and where you're watching us from. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Agenda Kenya with me, Jason Nyantino. Tonight we are discussing the just concluded pre-election coalitions that have just been formed by our political parties in readiness for elections 2013. And we're asking, can they take this country forward, or is it just business as usual? Dr. Otieno, you had something to say about the questions that were raised from the audience.
Yes, I think we now need to take this agreement to Mwananchi. The people need to be given the opportunity to scrutinize them. But one thing that we need now to wait for is agreement between these coalitions and the people of Kenya, which is in their manifestos. I think now is the time to start pushing them to tell us exactly what's in there for the Mwananchi. And we need to watch them very carefully when they come out with their joint manifestos on what they're going to do for the next 5 years. And I think that's where you'll decide whether I want to go with this coalition or this other coalition. And we are watching, people like us, we're waiting for those manifestos to come out. And as soon as they come out, then we can judge them based on what they're promising Kenyans.
Korir, thank you, Dr. Korir, do you think these pacts came a little too late? Because Lumumba feels that this should have come earlier so that we have time to educate people.
You know, I agree. Ideally, they should have come earlier. But the reality of our political process, I think since the adoption of the new constitution, is that we've been operating almost on a crisis basis. You know, we've been passing laws just because the timelines have arrived. And so because of the nature of our context right now, I think we've got to live with that. I think what we need to do is, like we said earlier, demand that political parties make public immediately the contents of this coalition agreements. And that if they do not do that, we should not hesitate at all, like pursuing legal action against them, for them to be able to disclose their contents. But like Dr. Otieno says, I agree absolutely. I think the substance of the ideologies and the development programs of these political parties and their coalitions will only become evident when we look at the manifestos. And I think citizens in this country need to be very, very vigilant in looking and scrutinizing each manifesto of every political party to ensure that their own interests are spoken about or they're articulated. And based on that, they can vote.
What is the role of the politicians themselves in terms, because we know that not everyone reads or accesses a newspaper, for instance. So I don't trust the reading culture of Kenyans.
Right.
Sorry to say that, but what is for instance, yourself, you're a leader in your own right. Are you running for any political office?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you running?
I'm running for member of parliament.
What are you running?
For member of parliament.
Where?
In Kwanza constituency.
Kwanza constituency.
Yes.
So assuming you go to Kwanza constituency,
yes.
How are you going to educate the masses down there that this is what this coalition arrangement means to you and me?
Absolutely. Just like we've been educating the citizens about the contents of the Constitution, about their rights in the Constitution, about the devolution arrangements. In the same way, when we are selling our ideas in terms of what we want to achieve for the citizenry, certainly we need to be able to expose the contents, of these agreements to the citizens. I think it is also incumbent on politicians themselves to be able to spend their time educating the citizens on the contents of this.
I hope they'll say the right thing, because those politicians tend to lie a lot when they are talking to the Mwananchi. My next question is from Donata James. Donata, your question, please.
Okay, I'm Donata from Kamkunji constituency. My question is, we have seen these different political parties forming coalition. Now I wonder, are this coalition to stay, or will it lead Kenyans to another election violence as experienced in 2007-2008 election violence?
Thank you, Donata Simani. We'll take that. We're talking about the cohesiveness. Are there roots? I mean, if one coalition member decides I'm tired, and it happens a lot in Kenya, by the way, because the moment the government is voted in and the cabinet is announced, you'll see a press conference the same day. Guys saying we've been shortchanged. What happens when these coalition partners are not satisfied?
Well, I'll answer this in two phases. First of all, we have spent this evening emphasizing that you must, first of all, read these coalition agreements so that you know what obligation lies on whom. So that if these coalition agreements break up, you are able, as the public, to determine who was at fault or responsible for the breakup of the coalition. But having said that, under the third schedule of the Political Parties Act, it is mandatory for these coalition agreements to have embedded in them a dispute resolution mechanism, so that we know when these coalitions break up or they get into disagreements, this is how they are going to resolve their disputes. And you are entitled to know that. And I'm going to spend this whole evening making that emphasis that the public must be part of this whole process. If not, then you, I am sorry to say, are irrelevant in this election process.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. David, as you respond, I need you to also interrogate the idea of the MOUs that we've known in this country for a long time. Do these coalitions have the force of law, such that we go around to hear that, we signed this and you should change this? Do they have the full force of law?
Of course, the coalitions have the full force of law. This time, as you heard Kalonzo Musyoka probably reiterate as they were launching and unveiling CORD, they have full force of law. But again, to get back to my sister, breakups are fundamentally there, particularly when you know and understand that the foundation and the basis on which you form that union is deceitful. Unions formed on the foundations of deceit don't last. Unions formed on the foundations of opportunism. Like one would argue with UDF, or one a candidate or the other who just wait for an opportunity that others might go to Hague and there might be a chance.
UDF
they cannot,
UDF is not here to defend themselves, so please,
I will
you need to withdraw. Because you were not there when they were negotiating.
I thought that's my opinion, because if I view it that it's opportunistic. That's my opinion. Formed on the basis of that, they are naturally bound to break. But unions formed with the understanding that the support base requests for it, that they share a common need, that these two support bases are in dire need of leadership that will implement the Constitution, which in a sense is the only heritage for young people in this country. It's very unlikely they would break. The leaders might not be in the same wavelength. But if the support base are in the same wavelength, they say we need devolution, we need more roads and better services at the ground here, it's unlikely they will have a point of departure.
Okay, thank you. Quickly, Dr. Tino, before I go to the audience.
My sister there. Unfortunately, in this country, we have just enough politicians to make us hate one another, and not enough priests to make us love one another. So these agreements have been signed by politicians who happen to be political chameleons. They are going to change. The only thing that we need to do this time is not to allow them to hate each other, to allow us, with the wananchi, to hate each other that will take something to fight each other's labor. I think this time, let them fight their own war. And us, leave us where we are. We will go vote, then let them sort it themselves.
Okay. Let's get to hear your views, especially about how will they last. The lifespan of coalitions in this country is just too short. At least that's what all of us know. So let's get to hear you in front in a tie. Your name, please.
My name is Michael Waleho. Actually, what I know is that there is a whole difference between what is written in the Constitution, the law that guides formation of pre-election pacts, and what is actually happened. Because on Monday, if you happened to be in the Central Business District, then you might have seen the rush, yeah? There was actually a lot of traffic jam in town. People running here and there to look for a possible person to get married to. I doubt there was time to discuss issues at that point. And this is worrying. I want to call my friend Osiani to attention. I have not seen, probably just one, but looking at the parties that have come together, I don't think there is any that are based on, have based their marriage on issues. Probably one. But we have seen a situation where one party rushes to look for a deal with another party. When it fails, they rush around again and look for a different deal from another party.
Even in a marriage, you don't do that, eh?
Even in a marriage, you don't do that. So really, what are the issues? Give me one party that is based on a coalition pact.
Thank you, Michael.
Coalitions are formed on Pan-Wakanda principles.
I think so. Yes, the gentleman on the second last row.
It was allegedly said at some point, through rumors and hearsay, that the pact between Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto is as a result of the fate that overtakes them at The Hague.
Okay.
So I was asking, what is the relevance of that pact to the Kenyans?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think, Korir, you need to take that straight away. Because you addressed it earlier, I think you can reiterate.
Right. I think it's very clear that, at least from where I sit, the TNA, UDF, URP coalition is based on ensuring that ethnic conflicts that have plagued our elections since 1992, particularly in the Rift Valley, that have caused colossal loss to our economy, that have caused deaths to thousands of people in this country, that have resulted in massive displacements of people, that kind of scenario is not repeated. Secondly, a coalition that desires or that seeks to secure political power in the first round, in my view, saves this country a lot of money. Because the cost of running a presidential election, like having a second go at it, or a runoff election, is very, very costly. So in my view, even if there was nothing else in this coalition, even if it was just about peace, even if it was just about burying the ghosts that have plagued our elections since 1992, I would argue that I think this is a coalition that you might want to give it a chance. But I'm not saying that is necessarily the best coalition.
Respond quickly. I need to. I've run out of time.
I just disagree.
Very quickly.
I disagree with him to say that one of the ticket of TNA, URP, and UDF wants to bring together and sort out ethnic conflicts. You, as well as myself, are aware that one of the most divisive factors amongst these two tribes has been the issue of land, and how to sort it out has never been found. And that simply because the son of one of this community and the son of another community stands up, bridges the gap, is a true hoax. Why? Because one of the leaders of that ticket is one of the reasons for our land.
So how is CORD addressing that? You're just criticizing the other one.
No, I'm not criticizing. I mean, in our manifesto, if you read about our manifesto, if there is one of the people who will ensure that the Constitution is implemented, is the CORD ticket. This has been, the people you see there are reformers. They are the starters of the campaign for a new constitution, when all these other people in the other ticket were lumped up working for another person.
Thanks a lot. I think, Dr. Tino, you have something to say as we wind up the show?
I think politicians will do anything to get elected. So it doesn't matter if this agreement, if URP was to meet, the agreement between URP was URP and ODM, will we be saying that it was bad? If it was between Tina and whatever, the other party, are we going to say that it was bad? This is what politicians do in this country. They do anything to get elected, and you are not in that equation. Me, the Mwananchi, I'm not in that equation. And that's what we need to remember. It has nothing to do with you.
All right, thank you. And that's where the curtain falls for Agenda Kenya this week. I thank all of you for participating, and of course, all of you at home for watching. You can be part of this discussion by responding to this question. Do you think the pre-election coalitions formed by our political parties are serving the interest of the common Mwananchi? Text your response to the number on your screen. Give us your name and where you're watching us from. You can also find us on Twitter and also Facebook pages that are running on your screen now. And let's get to know what you think. And until next week, bye-bye.